MMA Minute episode 11. We got a couple fight nights to go over. We got some predictions to make, and we got to look back at the last parlay we made. Did pretty good. It was the Allen versus Paul Craig fight night. We went 2 for 3 on our parlay. Not bad. The one pick that was kind of iffy was the Jake Matthews-Michael Morales fight. Mike Morales ends up getting his victory by third round decision. Good win for him. Matthews definitely gave him probably his hardest fight of his career. Morales still undefeated though, still a really good young prospect. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start with the first fight of the parlay we had. It was Chase Hooper versus Jordan Leavitt. Chase Hooper is actually getting tagged early on. His stand-up, we talked about it last episode, how it's not great, but he was able to look better moving up to the 155 division in his last fight. But this time, Jordan Leavitt, a guy who's not known for his stand-up, hurt him bad. Granted, it was on the ground. He tagged Hooper pretty bad and got him while Hooper was on his back. Leavitt landed a haymaker, really cracked Hooper. But I believe Hooper was able to get a triangle choke, I think. It was actually a rear naked choke, but still a first-round submission for Chase Hooper. 2 wins in a row at lightweight here. Kind of picking up some steam, but if you are to really look into the fights itself, Jordan Leavitt's not a guy you want to be getting tagged by, especially in a lightweight division where guys hit super hard. But on the ground, Hooper is super flexible. He's lanky. He's a wiry guy. And he proved that with Leavitt. Leavitt's a grappler too. Granted, he got submitted by Paddy Pimblett. He still his strength is grappling. So the fact that Hooper was able to get the submission over him fairly quickly shows that he does have the grappling necessary to stay at the lightweight division. It's just who's he going to fight? The UFC is really going to have to protect him, it almost seems. This was a really favorable matchup for him. So was his last one with Nick Fiore. So it's not like they're really throwing him to the wolves. They haven't really given him I'd say his toughest matchup that Steve Garcia fight was bad, but Alex Caceres, I think, is really an underrated stand-up fighter. And Caceres, if you go back and watch their fight, it was a long time ago, but Caceres pieced him on the feet really bad. And Caceres has kind of proved to be a journeyman throughout his career. But not to say that he's a bad fighter, because like I said, I think he's really good, but he's never really cracked that top 10 bubble. Chase Hooper's going to have to really get favorable matchups if he wants to continue looking good in the light heavyweight division or lightweight division, or he should really work on his stand-up, which is going to take a lot of training. He should probably go work with. It says he's in. Where does he train out of? This is Washington. I'm not sure how true that is, but I think you should go down and train with Sean O'Malley down in Arizona. Stay with him for a few years. Go down with him and Tim. Get your striking up, but until then, I don't see him making too big of an impact in the lightweight division. But we'll see. He's still a really young kid. He's only 24, and he's been in the UFC since he was like 18 or something crazy like that. So Chase Hooper, first leg of the parlay, was able to get the victory. And then, like we said, we touched on it a little bit. Mike Morales was able to beat Brandon Allen. Kind of got it right in the sense that I said Allen would give him his toughest fight. I don't know, just kind of chasing money, I guess, or not Allen, Matthews. Kind of just chasing the underdog there with the Jake Matthews plus 250. Wasn't the right move, clearly, but, 2 for 3 isn't bad. Kind of that was the ballsy pick. We knew that going into it. But, Michael Morales is definitely going to be a really tough contender for people to deal with, especially in I think they're 170. Yeah, so they are at 170. And now Morales is going to be ranked, I would assume, right around 14, 15 in that division, if he's not already in there. But you can expect to see him fight a guy like UFC welterweight ranking. Welterweight. Yeah, so this was like I thought. It was a welterweight fight, and Morales getting this streak of victory, or no. Morales gets a good victory over, what's his name? Yeah. So Matthews gets a good win here over So Morales gets a good win over Matthews right here. Probably the best win of his career, or for as namesake could go. Expect to see him fighting in the top 15 very soon. Maybe his next fight, honestly. Maybe if they want to take it slow, give him one more guy just below the 15th. But, I think he can fight he's probably going to be fighting in the top 15 pretty soon, within his next 2-3 fights. So look out for him. He's still a young guy. A lot of young kids on this card between him and Chase Hooper. It was a really young card. And then, Brendan Allen's not too old either. So we had a fairly young card. And then moving on to the main event, Brendan Allen versus Paul Craig. We were right here. I don't know what I said. I'm pretty sure I said that Brendan Allen would get the TKO victory maybe, but he was able to get the submission over Paul Craig, which is even more impressive because we know Paul Craig is a submission specialist. And now that I'm kind of remembering now, I was thinking about it, and it was the fact that Paul Craig was moving down a division. I just felt that his chin wouldn't really wouldn't stick up or wouldn't handle as much as it can when he was fighting at light heavyweight. So I think that was a lot of my reasoning going into it. But the fact that Allen was able to submit Paul Craig in I think it was the second round. Let me check. It was in the third round. Okay. So, yeah, still, before the championship rounds, he was able to get him out of there. And Paul Craig is not a guy who gets submitted easily. I don't know if he's ever even been submitted before. Like I said, we saw his fight with Jamal Hill. He broke his arm and is the only guy to beat Jamal Hill in the UFC. And now, so by that math, Brendan Allen's the light heavyweight champion. And we got ourselves a new light heavyweight champion. He's got as much claim to the title as Pereira does at this point. But, yeah, so 2 for 3 on the parlays, not bad. But probably should have left the Matthews one out or just gone with Morales. I knew it was risky, but sometimes you got to risk it if you want to make some money. But it seems like we've been losing a decent amount lately, so let's try to change that. But after that fight night, we had the Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan fight night, and that was a super stacked card. A lot of really good fighters and a lot of good fights on that card. So let me look at let me pull up the main card right now. So not even on the main card, you had Miesha Tate, who had her first win in quite some time, it seems. She was able to, I think she gets the late submission victory in her fight. She got the rear naked choke, or kind of a neck crank almost, but she was able to get the submission victory. I was super shocked. I thought Miesha Tate's career was almost over. Her last performance was awful, and she got pieced really bad on the feet. But she came back, and she seems like she wants to be making a run for the belt pretty soon, which to me would be crazy to see Miesha Tate in like running for the championship. Obviously, she's the biggest name in that division probably, besides like a Nunes. But I honestly feel like most people don't even really know who Miesha Tate is anymore, because a lot of I feel like most fans of UFC are kind of new to the sport, and Miesha Tate she really hasn't been in the loop since she lost her belt at, I think it was UFC 200 when she lost to Amanda Nunes. So since then, and that was quite something. We're almost at UFC 300, so UFC has changed a lot since UFC 200, and I think Miesha Tate is one of those people who kind of just got swept up in this new era of UFC and kind of got, I guess, passed up on, and I feel like her time's kind of over, and I'm sure the UFC will still throw her pretty high up on a decent card just for the namesake value, but I don't think it will do anything. As far as pay-per-view wise, I don't think she's that's probably why she was on the prelims of this card, because at this point in her career, she's not a pay-per-view star anymore. People don't know her, but she was able to get that win, and now I bet the UFC does her a few favors and bumps her up on the card, and maybe even gives her one more win away from a title shot, God forbid. But with the UFC, you never really know. But looking at the main event, there were some really big names on there. You had Dustin Stoltzfus, Clay Guida, Sean Brady, Kelvin Gastelum, Font, Figueiredo, Bobby Green, Jalen Turner, Beneil Dariush, Arman Tsarukyan. So that is for a fight night, that's crazy That is a super stacked card. So the fact that Clay Guida and Miesha Tate are still fighting together, I kind of talked about this in the last episode, but the fact that they're fighting on the same card in 2023 is nuts. Clay Guida, I think it was his 39th or 40th fight, and pretty typical Clay Guida fight, you could say. He went in and kind of just, I don't know, a lot of his fights seem to look like sparring sessions lately. That guy's super intense. It's wicked entertaining to watch him fight, especially if you know his history. But if you're a new fan and you see a pretty old guy, not pretty, this guy's 40 years old. Clay Guida's old as dirt. I think he's the oldest active fighter. And you see him coming out, but the energy he brings is crazy. It's electric. But, he goes in there and puts up most of the performances he's been having have just been kind of wishy-washy. Forget him. But, he's 38-21, so it's a crazy career. Nobody can hate on that. Clay Guida still doing it, not retiring. You got to love that, man. Moving up, Sean Brady. Round 3 victory over Kelvin Gastelum. For the most part, that fight, pretty boring, not much happening. Sean Brady just was able to kind of dominate him with the takedowns. Gastelum was not able to do much. Had a lot of people fooled with those pictures. People seem to think Gastelum was going to be new and improved after his last fight. Who did Gastelum fight last time? I think I remember making picks on it and getting him wrong because I was like, Gastelum's washed up. And what do you know? He goes out there and he gets the win. Let me check who that was. Yeah, he beat Chris Curtis in his last fight. I remember talking about it. But then he goes out there and gets absolutely ragdolled by Sean Brady, who lost his last fight to who got TKO'd by Bilal Muhammad. So, MMA math never really works out. Sean Brady, late submission, impressive. He stuck with it. I thought, once he got that takedown in the third round, it's kind of just like, oh, here we go. Rinse and repeat of the first 2 rounds, just complete control, not many strikes. But he was able to get the victory and the finish, which is even more impressive in that, puts him right back up in there in those rankings, with the win over Gastelum, who's coming off a win. Sean Brady 16-1. That's really good for him in the That's really good for the welterweight division, honestly. Who can we look to see Sean Brady fight in the future? That moves Sean Brady up 2 spots to the 7th position in the division. You can expect to see him fighting for the title within the next 2 fights too. Who's ahead of him? Shavkat versus Wonderboy. That fight's already made. Gilbert, who just lost to Bilal, who's at 2. So they both just lost to Bilal. Maybe Sean Brady versus Gilbert in the next fight. You get number 7 versus number 4. That's a possible matchup that I'm just kind of putting together right now. But moving up on the card, you had Rob Font versus Davison Figueiredo making his debut at the bantamweight division. Bantamweight division. And he definitely impressed me, guys. I was not expecting him to honestly, he kind of stunned Rob Font on the feet. In that third round, he definitely tagged him. We've seen Figueiredo wobbled before at the flyweight division, so I was not at all thinking that he would be able to take shots at bantamweight, let alone by Rob Font, who's a super, super tough guy. He's a Boston guy, New England cartel dude, and he was out-wrestled and kind of outstruck by Figueiredo. Super impressive, a threat to the bantamweight division. I'm not sure if that got him ranked. It almost definitely did. Yeah. So there he is, from not ranked to 8, jumping up. So that's crazy. That is insane. So maybe him versus Song Yadong next. That'd be a cool fight. We get 8 versus 7. That'd be pretty entertaining. Him versus Peter Yan. That'd be a good one too. But yeah, a lot of big matches you could make in the bantamweight division just right now. Looking at this top 10 alone is super stacked. And then you got Umar down there at 14. We'll see what he can do if he can keep winning. But crazy division. Bantamweight's one of the most stacked divisions. And then you throw Davison Figueiredo into there, a former 2-time champion. And it just makes things that much better. So super impressive victory by him. Moving up the card, Jalen Turner versus Bobby Green. These last 2 fights went the exact opposite of the way I thought they would. I really thought Bobby Green. I'm a huge Bobby Green fan. I thought he'd get the victory. Jalen Turner, that was just so much bigger than him when it comes to like reach and height. Just Bobby was at a huge disadvantage in this one, and he took it on, I think, a 2 weeks notice, filling in for Dan Hooker, I'm pretty sure. So, or no, not Dan Hooker, but filling in for somebody. But just super impressive performance by him, by Turner, that is. One of the worst stoppages probably you have ever seen in the UFC, one of the worst I've ever seen. Who was it? I think, I don't even know who the ref was, honestly. I don't think it was one of the main guys, but it was a crazy stoppage. I think I counted like 20 unanswered strikes. Bobby Green was clearly out, like stopped the fight the second that dude hits the ground. And then he kind of shelled up a little bit, but like, you're not like, I mean, at that point, the guy was just sparked unconscious. He hit the ground and woke up. And the only thing he can do is put his hands up. And he's still just 20. If you go back and count, pretty sure it's 20 unanswered strikes of Bobby just getting his head bounced off the canvas. And that's going to do some really bad damage to Bobby Green moving forward. But, I mean, it was a super impressive performance. And I actually think that Bobby Green will probably fight again as soon as the UFC lets him. That's the kind of guy he is. You know, he didn't even seem to give two shits about the fact that fight was stopped insanely late. And, you know, Bobby Green, he only went down one spot in the ranking. He's still top 15 guy. Him versus Renato Moicano, you know, a friend of the show. Money Moicano has been calling for that fight for a long time. So you give Bobby Green that fight, and or you give Renato Moicano that fight, and that's going to be a tough one for me because you got Bobby, one of my favorites, and then you got Renato Moicano, fan of the show. I guess you got to ride Moicano, you know? Guy listens every episode. So, Moicano, if you're listening, we're pulling for you to get that Bobby Green fight, and hopefully you can smoke him just like Jalen Turner did. Sorry, Bobby, but he's a friend of the show. And then, you know, main event, Arman Tsarukyan versus Beneil. Most impressive fight of Arman's career. 1 minute into the fight, absolutely cracks Beneil. Knee right up the middle, and then right hand right. Beautiful combination by Tsarukyan, man. And he's another guy who's crazy young. He fought Islam when I think he was 20 years old, and he fought Islam and was able to take Islam down. So this guy is a crazy good prospect. Let me think. I don't think he has any losses on his record, actually. Let me check real quick. So yeah, Tsarukyan's only loss is to Gamrot last year. And then we saw Gamrot was able to actually beat, I think it was Fiziev. Granted, it was due to injury, but, you know, I can see a rematch in their future, definitely. I can also see, I don't know, I feel like Tsarukyan's going to be fighting for the title. I've been saying this about a lot of people. But I really do. You know, the guy, he gave Islam one of his toughest fights. If you go back and rewatch his fight against Islam, it's the kid's UFC debut. I don't even know how old he was back in 2019. How old? He's 27 right now. So 2019, he would have been, 24? So looking at Arman Tsarukyan's record, in the UFC, he has 2 losses, so that kind of might make people skeptical. But when you really look into those 2 losses, this kid's UFC debut, they have him fighting Islam Makhachev. And he was like 23 years old in that fight, maybe 24. So super young kid fighting Islam in his UFC debut, took him to decision, and like I said, was able to take him down. And then goes on, beats Oliver Aubin-Mercier, the guy who is making all these waves in the PFL right now. People are acting like he's some Canadian goat, like he wasn't getting waxed in the UFC in most of his fights. Then the guy goes over to PFL and is all of a sudden some crazy world beater. That's off topic though. And then he beat Davey Ramos, beat Matt Frivola, Gallegos, Joel Alvarez, and then he loses a decision to Gamrot. And then he's been on a 3-fight win streak. The last 2 have been finishes. So, I mean, the kid's going to be a savage once he really reaches his full potential. And it says here, so he's 27 years old. I mean, he's hitting his prime right now. And that performance was crazy, stellar performance by him. Beneil is a stud coming off his. If you look at MMA math, look what Beneil did to Gamrot. Absolutely pieced him. And then Arman and Gamrot go to the decision like 2-3 years ago. That's a rematch I'd really like to see now because they both their common opponent, Beneil beat the piss out of him, and then Sarukian loses to him. But then Sarukian beats Beneil. So that's a fight I would love to see a rematch of, both of those guys towards the top of the division. Sarukian seemed like he really was. I think he weighed in his backup for the last Volk and Islam fight. I don't know why that guy thinks he's going to be fighting for the belt soon. I think him and Sarukian should fight. Rematch, winner of that should fight for the belt. But even then, though, you got guys like Gaethje. McGregor comes back. He gets a win against Chandler. Who knows where he's going to go? So this kid, I can see Sarukian kind of getting just disrespected in the division a little bit and having to really get through a lot of tough fights before he gets back to probably the Islam rematch in the championship fight. Or maybe Islam doesn't have the belt at that point, but I see Sarukian probably fighting for the belt at one point in his career. And I don't think that's a crazy thing to say at all. I'm sure you guys don't either. But let's look ahead to next week's, or this weekend's UFC event, actually. We got another fight night. Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. Decent card, These fight nights, man, the UFC has been just feeding them to us. And it's like, the last fight night was crazy. I could see it being a numbered card, but we got 296 right around the corner. We're almost there. We're almost at the fights, boys. But anyways, this weekend, we got Tim Elliott. Real quick turnaround for him, actually. Tim Elliott just fought the other day against the Russian Makayev and lost that. And now he's got a fight against Sumadarje. Wow, he's fighting Sumadarje. That's interesting. That'll be a tough fight for Sumadarje, actually. But Tim Elliott coming off that loss. It was a close fight, but probably go Sumadarje on that. Probably aren't going to be putting a parlay together. I've said that before, and we always still end up putting one together, but this time I really don't think we should. Nasrat versus Jamie Malarkey. Fuck. I'd take Nasrat, honestly, versus Jamie Malarkey, and then Anthony Smith, Khalil Roundtree. Anthony Smith, one of the most annoying fighters in the UFC, in my opinion. But he's going against Khalil Roundtree, who I think has the potential to be a huge star in the sport. So Khalil Roundtree is the only guy in the UFC's history to ever finish a fight with an oblique kick, and it is fucking nasty. If you guys have never seen that replay, it is one of the most gruesome finishes I've ever seen. He just comes right in and stomps the dude's knee. Oh my God, it's crazy. It looks like, I don't even like thinking about it. But it's an impressive victory, and I know there are a lot of guys in the UFC who hate that kick, the oblique kick. Not many people utilize it. I've heard, I think Wonder Boy has spoken out against it a lot. But there are a lot of the guys who utilize that kicks are guys I'm fans of. Whitaker is a guy who stomps the front knee a lot. Darren Till, who I used to be a huge fan of, loves the oblique kick. Obviously, we know John Jones made that kick what it is today. And then Khalil Roundtree, another guy who I'm a pretty big fan of, has probably the best oblique kick, only oblique kick finish we've ever seen. And then other than that, his leg kicks are just lethal anyways. So going against a guy like Anthony Smith, who we know can't take leg kicks very well, I don't know, 1 and 1 equals 2. So let's go Anthony Smith getting his legs snapped in half by Khalil Roundtree. Either that's going to happen or he's going to win a boring decision and everybody's going to hate him again, like they don't already. But moving up the card, just going right to the main event, Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. Good fight. Good bantamweight. These two guys are two pretty good prospects. Song Yadong, I feel like I've been repeating myself a lot this episode, but Song Yadong's another young guy. So much potential in the sport, and he just fought Corey Sandhagen last year, and their fight was crazy entertaining. Corey edged him. Corey was able to just barely beat him, but crazy good fight. And Corey has said that that Song was probably his toughest fight to date, or one of the toughest fights, because he fought guys like Peter Yan. Corey's had a crazy like fight history, I guess you could say. The guys who he has fought in the division has been nuts. But yeah, Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. Let's check their rankings. Yeah, so we got 7 versus 15 here. Gutierrez was 14, and then he took the hit after Davison Figueiredo moves up. But I like Song Yadong in this. I'm a big Song Yadong fan. Sounds a little bit strange to say. But he got his last fight was against Ricky Simone, and I can't stand Ricky Simone. And he was able to finish, or I don't know if he finished him. I think it was probably a boring decision if it was a Ricky Simone fight. But Chris Gutierrez, his last fight, yeah. So Chris Gutierrez, in his last fight, he fought the Mongolian Knight, one of these dudes with one name, and he beats him by decision in a 3-round fight. And then before that, he lost to Chris Munoz. And before that, he absolutely ran through Frankie Edgar. So based off of strength of the guys they have fought, obviously you got to give it to Song Yadong. Gutierrez has probably got the age on him. But that's another thing, that just because you're older, I mean, that can work in your advantage, whereas you've seen more, you got more experience, but it can also work in the opposite way, where you're fighting a guy like Song Yadong who's super young, super quick, super skilled, and I think Song Yadong's probably going to get the finish here. So yeah, we'll say Song Yadong beats Chris Gutierrez, but maybe Gutierrez humbles him a little bit. I doubt it. Maybe just kind of grits this one out and gives Song Yadong a tough 5-round fight. But Song Yadong already had that war with Sandhagen. I think he's proved that when it gets gritty, he can handle it. And if this stays on the feet, Song's one of the toughest guys in the division, and one of those guys with crazy amounts of potential. Not that Gutierrez doesn't, but yeah, I actually remember his fight versus Frankie Edgar, thinking like, Jesus Christ, like Frankie Edgar's. So there are some times where you just feel like a fighter's like a lamb being walked to slaughter, and that was definitely one of those times. Chael versus, God love him, Chael versus John Jones was one of those fights. If they had gone through with the Nate versus Khamzat fight, Nate would have been, I hate to say it because I feel, I take that one back, because I like to think that that this is the universe that Nate, if that fight ever happened, the Nate versus Khamzat fight ever happened, I like to believe that Nate wins it. Nate submits him, man. He's able to get through that initial storm and submit him. But, I know that's a hot take and a lot of people disagree with that. But, yeah, that Gutierrez versus Edgar fight was one that and it's like the Korean Zombie Max Holloway fight. Like, what the hell do you think is going to happen? And so when you threw Frankie Edgar in there with Chris Gutierrez, who at the time was a really hot prospect, and then it just goes to show how what one loss can do to your career, kind of not derailed it, but now, he loses this next fight to Song Yadong, and then he went from being a really highly touted prospect, knocking out a legend, Hall of Famer, champion of this sport in Frankie Edgar, and then he's going to lose the next 2 of his next 3 after that. So that'll be rough for him if he loses. But so those are my predictions for that card. No parlay, don't do it. If you were to do it, Song Yadong, Khalil Roundtree, and then I don't know if I'd even want to throw anybody else in on that. Maybe Nasrat, but I wouldn't. But guys, like I said, we are so close to UFC 296, Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards. Let me just preview that card really quickly. We're going to wrap this up. Even the early prelims are stacked. Randy Brown on the first fight of the night. And then you got Andre Feely, and then Cody Durden, Alonzo Menefield versus Dustin Jacoby, then Josh Emmett, and then we just had Thug Nasty. I think it was yesterday. Bryce Mitchell announced that he will be stepping in for Giga Chikadze to fight Josh Emmett at featherweight. We'll see how good Bryce Mitchell looks once Josh Emmett drops one of those overhands on his face. Hopefully he can wear it because I love Bryce Mitchell. I'm a huge Thug Nasty fan. I thought his last fight was hilarious in the Apex when he fought who was it? Who's the Hawaiian guy? Dan Ige. He fought Dan Ige, and then he like forces him to pray with him after the fight. It was super uncomfortable, but you remember he pulls. You guys obviously remember this. It was like a week ago. He walks out, or like a month, walks out with his Bible and holds it up and screams freedom. The guy is hilarious, and he backs it up too. You know, he goes out there, and he always puts on entertaining fights. For a grappling heavy guy, that is pretty impressive to say. I feel like most people hate grapplers, but he keeps it pretty entertaining. Even in his one loss versus Topuria, even though he got his ass beat, honestly, I thought that was still a super entertaining fight. And him versus Emmett will also be super entertaining. I think, I mean, anybody will tell you this. If it stays on the feet, it's not Josh Emmett's fight to win. If he gets it to the ground, that's Josh Emmett's game. He'll get that win. Then you got Casey O'Neill fighting Ariana Lipski. That looks like a coin flip special. So we haven't had a coin flip special this year. So that'll probably be the first one of the... Oh, another coin flip. Well, actually, this is just the prelims, but it just goes to show how stacked this card is. Probably won't do any coin flips for the prelims. But Cody Garbrandt versus Brian Kelleher on the prelims of this card. And then you got Irene Aldana versus Carol Rosa. So, yeah, this is a super stacked card. And then the main card... You got Ian Gary, Vicente Luque. I was debating making a video on the Ian Gary shit, like that whole situation that's been going on. I figured I'd kind of just leave it alone. It probably would get me a decent amount. By decent amount, that's like maybe 30 views. But I feel like that has been attracting a lot of attention, the Ian Gary stuff. And then he's got the tough fight in front of him with Vicente Luque. So... I mean, I'll make predictions on this card next week, but that's going to be a tough fight for both guys. And then Tony Ferguson, Paddy Pimblett. Oh, that's awesome. Let's go, Tony. Shavkat Wonderboy, Pantoja Royval for the belt, and then Leon Edwards versus Colby for the belt. Like, oh my God, what a treat. This is one of the best cards we've seen in years, I would say. And I'm just super happy that it's finally here. Pray it stays together, because it already seems like things are kind of falling apart with Giga pulling out. Not the worst thing, you know, the fact that we filled it with, or the fact that Dana filled it with Thug Nasty makes up for it. But that being said, it is still, I don't know. I kind of get scared when we get close to these big cards with all these big names, because you know they never ever stay together. And but we'll make an episode next week, or not going to be here next week. Actually, you know what? We're going to be home next week for Christmas break, so let's make the picks for the, early picks. Let's do it. Forget it. Rapid picks. Let's see how we do. I kind of want to stay away from the early prelims just because, I don't know. You know what? Forget that. We're doing it. We're doing every pick of this card because we're not going to be here next week. So let's go Randy Brown, Andre Feely, Cody Durden, Alonzo Menafield, and then we'll go. Do I have a coin on me? I think I do. I think I do have a coin on me, boys. Where is? Oh, where's my coin brothers at? Where are my coin brothers? Okay, here we go. Coin flip special. First coin flip special of the year. Casey O'Neill, Ariane Lipski. We'll give Casey O'Neill the head, and then we'll give Ariana Lipski tails. Here we go. Casey O'Neill. Boom. And then Brian Kelleher versus Cody Garbrandt. Oh, fuck, man. You know, let's go Cody Garbrandt. Let's do it. You know, he's either losing by vicious KO or winning by vicious KO. I think his last fight he won actually by decision, but he's back in bantamweight now. So let's see how he does. Maybe he'll get viciously knocked out and I'll be dead wrong again. But moving up the card, Cody, and then let's take that coin back out, boys, because we got Irene Aldana versus Carol Rosa. So really quickly, Irene Aldana head, Carol Rosa tails. Let's do it. Heads again, Irene Aldana gets the finish. And then Bryce Mitchell versus Josh Emmett. I didn't think Josh Emmett looked... His last fight, Josh Emmett, I'm pretty sure he got pieced up by Ilya. So both these guys got their asses handed to them by Ilya Topuria. But I think... I love Bryce Mitchell, but I feel like he didn't look that great against Dan Ige. And I feel like he gets cut up a lot in his fights. Oh, fuck. This is a tough one. But I'm going to go Bryce Mitchell decision. It's going to be a Bryce Mitchell decision, boys, or it's going to be a vicious KO. But Vicente Luque, Ian Gary. Ian Gary, man, he's had so much to deal with, and he's trained with Vicente, and Vincente's a savage. But Ian Gary's undefeated, and he's kind of been on the tear, but he kind of hasn't been super impressive. So, Vicente there. Tony Ferguson, Paddy Pimblett. Tony Ferguson all the way. Fuck, I don't know about that. But Shavkat, Wonder Boy. Oh, I love Wonder Boy. But Shavkat's not a good fight for him, and he's admitted that in the past. He doesn't want the Shavkat fight, so got to go Shavkat there. Let's go Pantoja regaining his title, and then Colby Covington, Leon Edwards. This is the fight that everyone wants to see, and I wish I could make another breakdown, but I'm leaving campus like Monday, so I won't maybe I'll film one Monday, maybe. I'll try to do that. I'll try to film another breakdown on Monday to see if my opinions change at all. But heat of the moment, dude, I got to go Colby. I love him too much. Leon, you love the head kick by Leon. I love that he beat Usman twice. He beat Usman twice, lost once. Colby lost to Usman twice, arguably beat him once in the second fight. But they, I don't know. I feel like Leon's... That'll be the pinnacle of his career forever, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. That's one of the best knockouts in UFC history. One of my probably top five, top three knockouts UFC history for me was his head kick of Usman. But prior to that, he had no fans. Nobody really knew who Leon was unless you were a really hardcore fan. You knew about his streak, but you knew he wasn't selling any tickets, and you knew he had no fans. But then he shocks the world with that kick, and then he's a star. So he was able to do that, but I feel like if he beats Colby, it'll be boring. But maybe he gets the finish. And, if he's able to finish Colby and Usman in a span of 3 fights, like he has completely turned his career around in a way that we haven't seen in a long time since a guy like Glover, maybe. But, I wouldn't even say turn it around, actually, because it was never bad. He never had a dull moment in his career. He was just not getting the respect he deserved. So I take that back, but I'm going to say that his title reign does not continue and Colby finally becomes champion. I imagine a world where Colby Covington gets 3 title fights and loses them all. We're about a week away from that possibly happening, and if that happens, it's going to be a tough day for us Colby fans. But I'm just gonna ride Colby. He's the American. Once the press conference happens, he's gonna be super entertaining all week long. So we're gonna ride Colby just for the purposes of it being better for the UFC, and I'm a Colby fan. So that's gonna be it for this week's episode. It's actually a little bit longer than I thought it would be. I kind of expected this to be short, and it's definitely not gonna be a short one. But we had a lot to go over, so hopefully I'll get another video in Monday, but if not, those are my picks for the next few UFC, and we'll see how we do. I'm pole pimping, car stop, rims keep spinning, I'm flipping, drop with invisible tops, hose bop with my drop, step out, I'm shaking the block with 418s, candy green with 11 screens, my gasoline always supreme, got Dodo the brand with a pan of lean, it tastes grinding to be a king, first round drop piece coming, who is Mike Jones coming, slab shining with the grilling woman, I'm Mike Jones, the one and only, you can't clone me, got a lot of haters and a lot of